Welcome to Talent Freaks with Andy Coon. I'm Andy, a filmmaker and photographer based in the Bay Area of California. This podcast delves into the journeys of creative individuals who inspire curiosity and impact through their work. In this episode, we're revisiting a conversation from 2010 with independent filmmaker Todd Tinkham. Based in Hillsborough, North Carolina, Todd has a remarkable ability to craft heartfelt, character-driven stories that resonate deeply with audiences. At the time of this interview, Todd's short films have been screened at over 250 film festivals worldwide, showcasing his immense talent and dedication to the craft. We explore Todd's inspiring journey from working with at-risk kids to pursuing his dream of filmmaking later in life. He shares insights into his creative process, his approach to storytelling, and the collaborative spirit that drives his success. And Todd, to me, is one of my favorite North Carolina-based filmmakers that I came across when I worked and lived in North Carolina. His movies really did hit the human experience, and it was beautiful, emotional storytelling. And, I'm a little biased because he invited me to be a background actor in one of his movies and also part of the crew. So it was a wonderful, wonderful experience working with him. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and rate Talent Freaks on your favorite podcast platform. It helps others discover these inspiring stories, and I'm incredibly grateful for it. So let's head back to 2010 and let the younger version, and with a close connection, introduce you to filmmaker Todd Tinkham. Todd Tinkham is an independent filmmaker that lives in Hillsborough, North Carolina. And he called me one day and said, "Hey, Andy, I'd like to get you on set and play this role." And I met him before, but that was my first introduction to his filmmaking with his crew. And I was just so awed about how well the crew, the filmmakers, everyone, they were just in unison with each other, and they made each other better. That's what I got from the set. So I just wanted to know more about Todd, and I've seen his work. His short films have been in over 250 film festivals in the past 3 years, and it keeps growing. This interview took place right after I watched his film, Southland of the Heart, and gave him some feedback. So he might be really angry at me right there because I just tore it apart. Just tore it apart, Todd. Actually, it was awesome. Everyone, if you listen to this, wait until his film comes out. You'll be pleasantly surprised. It is an absolutely amazing film. I can't wait for it to get out there so people can start watching it. Anyway, here's a conversation I had with Todd Tinkham. Enjoy. Well, thank you, Todd Tinkham, for joining me with Conversations Coon. I am in your home.
Yeah, I couldn't help but join you.
I've
been hiding.
You have. I've been trying to get to you for a while. But first of all, thank you for inviting me to see your film, and also asking me to be a part of it. It was very special, and it was. I went with no expectations and walked away with just going wow, like with everything. But let's just talk about I read up on your bio, and some of the things that really stuck out for me was how you got involved in filmmaking. Can you tell me about when you first started shooting and your passion for it?
When I was a kid, I wanted to write and direct films. That's what I wanted to do. I mean, I didn't know. I just knew I wanted to make movies. And we didn't have a camera at all. It was right before VHS kind of came out and stuff, and or right around the time it came out. So it was very expensive, and my family couldn't afford one, so we didn't have any. And we didn't have any. My dad was real creative and had cameras around, but he left when I was young. And then, so just kind of slipped away as I got older. And went to college, majored in English. And when I got out, I started working for Outward Bound, and then got into working with people, and worked with people, mostly at-risk kids, for 17 years. And when my parents died, my dad was a very creative person. I became closer to him later in his life. And he was a tremendous artist, and he never pursued it. He got caught up in the business world and just kind of let it slide. And when he died, then my mom died, and my mom had always wanted to get into acting and didn't. And my stepdad died. I don't really know what he wanted to do, but it certainly wasn't, being a fisherman his whole life, which is what he did. So when they died, I realized that they had died kind of what people say, you die with your music still inside you. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I really want to go for it. So that was in my early 40s. I've been working with at-risk kids for a long time. I was in management. I was running a huge program here in North Carolina. And it just felt like the right time to quit. I was ready. And so I quit and cashed in my retirement, which wasn't much, working in nonprofits, and decided I was going to take some classes and start moving in that direction.
Where did you go for the classes?
The first place I went to was Piedmont Community College. And what I realized then was that unless I was really young, most people will help you if you're young. But if you're kind of in your 40s and you're asking somebody in their 40s for money because you want to make a movie and you don't have a name or anything, they're kind of like, get a job. So I was like, okay, I need to go out and make some money. So I got back into management, but this time management consulting, and started working with some of the larger companies here in RTP. And I did that as an executive coach. I was coaching people. And it was a lot of fun because you didn't have to prepare at all. Didn't really have to learn anything special. I just had to show up, and if it worked, it worked. And if it didn't, we knew right away. And
so give me an example of how you coach an executive.
So, what I found was that a lot of men in middle management had never really wanted to be there. They were good at something else, let's say software development. And because they were good at it and liked by everybody, they were offered a management position. And then they moved in and became a manager. And they relied on their strengths. And then because they were liked and because they were pretty good at that, they got moved up again. Now all of a sudden they're a junior VP, and they have no ability to confront any issues. And they have a lot of issues building with all sorts of, managers under them and employees and all sorts of things. And they have to, deal with these things. And they've never had to. And so they're kind of stuck. And so a coach will come in, and, me, the type of coach that I am, I'll come in and I'll say, let's get to the heart of the problem. I'm going to talk to people around and kind of under you, around you, above you, and kind of find out how you're perceived, if that's okay. I'm like, yeah. And then a lot of times they'll talk and just tell you too that, I don't know what to do about this situation. Well, this situation is like the other three you've told me about. Really what's required is you need to address the situation. And then we role play. And I remember one time this guy who I really admired a lot, just role playing with me that I was the person he had to address. His voice started shaking, and he really had difficulty even just saying the words. I noticed that you're coming in late every day. You're coming in at noon every day.
You're just role playing.
Yeah, we're just role playing. But ultimately, he was able to address it and move forward. And some of these guys had wanted to do other things in their lives. One guy wanted to be a leader of a dance troupe. Another guy had wanted to be a writer. And so I began coaching up, the president didn't know this, but I began coaching them to start getting into what they wanted to do when they were younger. And maybe even stepping down from management and doing something that they really enjoyed again. And then one guy turned to me at one point and said, I know this isn't what you wanted to do. You want to be a filmmaker. How come you're not doing it? And it was at that point that I said, okay, I'm getting golden handcuffs myself, and time to really get back into the filmmaking. It's like, okay, I'm going to do it.
What was more difficult, working with the at-risk kids or working with the executives?
Sometimes executives would ask that. It was exactly the same. We're all at risk for something. We're all at risk for losing love. We're all at risk for being poor. We're certainly all at risk for dying someday. And we all deal with those in some way, and that's what it all comes down to.
It's beautiful. It's funny you mentioned that because I did the same thing, except I'm the corrosion in the corporate office, because I remember I went to right after I graduated college, I moved to New York and worked at Westwood One, the big radio conglomerate, and I was a traffic coordinator. So basically, I was placing ads. So toilet paper wouldn't place against other toilet paper. That was my job, and I felt so I went to college for this kind of crap. I was only there for about a month and a half, but when I was there, I rebelled so hard that this one girl who worked there, she was like the typical corporate type who never questioned anything, and then she sat behind me. By the time I left, she quit. She went on to Amtrak to do the Orient Express, and just traveled on the train for a good, I think, for about 10 years.
Wow.
She never told me that I was the reason, but I mean, when I was sitting there, always like spewing my rhetoric, going like, "You screw this. I'm not working for the man. I want to do my art." She was sitting there going, "Yeah, why am I doing this? I want to do something I love." She took off, but I didn't. If I ever got that high level, I would destroy corporate America. But I think you were doing that, and I think I'm blaming you for this economic.
Well,
downturn.
it's funny. Corporate America needs a certain amount of outsiders and outlaws. And they bring them in a good way. I'm not talking about Enron type stuff. I'm talking about, they need someone who comes in who doesn't have a business background, who sees the world differently, to say, well, let's look at it this way. Whether that's in a team meeting or a one-on-one session, it's good to have somebody who says, let's look at it differently.
I agree.
And let's
totally.
not. And I also never used corporate speak or consultant speak, which I think
You treat them like humans.
it did me really well. I treated them like at-risk kids, like I am, and all of us are, and I think they responded to it. But the thing was, with my parents' death, and it keeps coming back for me. I realized that I was going to die, and that the biggest thing that I have is time, and I can be really wealthy and not have any time, and I'm not going to be happy. Mm-hmm. I could be somewhat poor, like I am now, and have lots of time. And as long as I have the things that I need to make the things that I want, then I'm happy and I can move forward. If it gets too far down, then it's kind of like, panic time, and you got to, what I'm going to eat, I'm going to keep the lights on, those types of things. It can be a little difficult. So it's a real balance. But I think our culture pushes so much toward having more and acquiring and having bigger and larger and more expensive, that you can get caught up in that.
Yeah, the measure of success can really, thwart you back and change your whole outlook in life.
Yeah.
So tell me about, when did you realize, when you're working at corporate as your, the coach, like when did that finally click, and what was your first project?
I think when that guy Bob said to me, "You're not doing it," and he didn't say it with quite that much acid.
Say it very passive aggressively.
No, he just pointed it out. Like, well, you're not doing it either. It's like, yeah, you're right. And so that kind of moved me, and it took a while, but I did, move away from it and gave it over to somebody else who was working in those companies as well. And the first project I did, I was on I used to work for a big pharmaceutical company here that would fly me to London to work with people there as well. Mostly that was more team-based stuff, but I had people I was coaching as well. And then when I was done in London, I would often fly to other countries to visit for a week or two. And that was what's great about consulting, is you have, your time, you get paid really well, and then you have a lot of time. And I went to Ireland one time, and I wanted to do a documentary on this poet there. And I flew a guy up who I had met, who was from South Africa, who was living in the U.S., but he couldn't work. And so he came to be my cameraman. And I did sound, and we did this documentary. And we never finished it, but that was the first one. And while we were shooting, and he had done a lot of stuff for Discovery Channel and things like that, Animal Planet, he said, and he had a real South African Germany accent kind of, and he said, "I want to shoot fiction films. You should write something. If you want to do fiction, I want to do fiction, write something." So when we got back to the States, and this was in 2005, I wrote a 5-page script, and I gave it to him, and he said, "Shit, man, this is good. This is good. Let's shoot this. You wrote this? This is good." And it was called And Then There Were None, N-U-N. And it's just a real simple 5-minute tale about a slacker guy who gets killed by a bunch of wind-up nuns in the end. And it went out and screened at 35 festivals. And I was like, I could get into this, And oh, you're the guy who did that Nun movie. I was like, yeah, this is great.
How many people worked in that film?
We're a crew of 5, I think. And I didn't know anybody. I knew one actor, and I needed 2. And I said to this guy, Rob, I said, hey, would you be in my movie? And he read the script. He goes, yeah. And I said, I need someone to be the woman who turns into the nun who has all the little nuns that kill him. And he said, my friend Mary Cates would be great at this. And that's where I met Mary Cates, who's my partner and has helped me on every film. Her and her sister Lisa have co-produced every movie of mine. And they've been in a bunch of them. They're just phenomenal. So that was the first film. And then I was like, that's easy. If I can do one simple film for 5 minutes, 2 characters, I could do a big one with like 10 characters and 10 locations and all this. And so got a bunch of people together and we went really gung-ho into it. And it was so bad. I never finished it. Editing. It was just too much. I just took it on and I got a real lesson. Like, you got to do things in small steps, especially if you don't have a ton of money, and it was just, everyone works so hard and never, I did finally finish it, but I never show anybody,
One of the things that strikes me about your work is, especially when you go to your website, you see that you've been in over 200 film festivals. How many films have you done and submitted to film festivals?
Well, I finished 23 short films from 2005 when my first film festival was the Flint Film Festival in Flint, Michigan. And I really wanted to go because I love Michael Moore. He's just the ultimate lefty. And so I went to Flint, and God, it was just such a depressing place. But the festival was just wild and fun. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is great. There was nobody from industry or anything, there. It was just a bunch of people from all over the country.
That love movies.
Love movies, love drinking beer, love having fun. And it was just a great time. It was like, all right, I can do this. And I also, I was kind of looking at like, by going to festivals, and I went to a bunch of festivals that I'd never had films in, and I would just go to see what was there. You go to a festival like Santa Barbara or the Hamptons or Slam Dance. You go to those festivals and you see stuff that's like so good that it's like your film has to be this good to get in here. And with the local film festivals, there aren't that many films to compete against, and people, and they're going to take your film. It's Todd's film. Yeah. Hey, buddy, you guys need anything shot? I'll help you. Here's my film. And there's nothing wrong with that, but the problem is, and then you try to send it out to the bigger festivals, and you just get slammed. So I was getting slammed a lot, so I started to go to festivals and see what was out there. And then I would get in touch with the filmmakers who I really liked and ask them if I could have the film on DVD, and became friends with some of them. And because I really want to learn from it, I want my films to be this good. I remember sitting in a festival, I think it was Rhode Island International Film Festival, which is one of the big ones in the country. And our film came on, and our film was pretty good. And I was sitting next to Mary, and I was like, oh, wow, it looks good, it sounds good, this is great. Felt really good. And the next film that came on blew it out of the water. It was so good. And it ended up winning Best Film. It was like so good. And I just turned to Mary and I said, I am going to make films like that from now on. We're going to get that good because that's the kind of thing I want to make. It was the story was great, the acting was great, the shooting was great, everything was great. It was like, I got to get there. How am I going to get there? And so I think going to festivals helped me. It really helped me learn that you can't just do mediocre work. You can't be happy with your friends saying it's good. You got to go places where no one knows who you are, no one cares, except for what's on the screen. It doesn't matter if you spend $5 or 500,000. What's up there is what matters. And I got that real clear after Rhode Island, and it was like, okay.
What film was it in Rhode Island that you saw?
It was the film that I saw was called. My film was Sadie Turned 7, and the next film up there was called. I think it was Raccoon, and it. I've never seen. You can't get it anywhere. The guy has gone on to do features, and he does a lot of commercials, like big time stuff.
Right.
Like Toyota and things. I can't remember his name right now, but I've looked for it. I can't find it, and he never responded to me. But other people have, and I did get their movies. But that Raccoon, and I remember there was another one called A Cigar at the Beach by a guy named Steve Mills. And it was so good. It was right after our film Riverside played. And I saw it it might have been the Indie Memphis or something. And it was so good that I got in touch with him and got his film, and we became friends, and we appeared at a bunch of festivals together. And his film, A Cigar at the Beach, screened at 80 film festivals, at that point. And it won like at 20. And I was like, I might not be able to get into like Sundance and Telluride and stuff. At that point, I was like, I won't be able to get in those. But what if I got in like hundreds of film festivals? What if like I could be the guy who, because I was looking for a way to separate myself from the group, like
right.
in a running race, you're in a group and it's like you want to get in front of them and you want to win, or place. And I was like, what if I just like got my films into festivals? So I started writing a lot of festivals that I'd been rejected from, asking about my film long after they had been rejected, but they remembered them. And they were like, mostly it was too long. It's like, if you get a film, if you can get these films down to 8 minutes or 10 minutes, it'd do a lot better. So I started making, instead of making 17 and 20-minute films, I started making 8 and 10-minute movies, and which I should have learned from my first one, which is 5 minutes, And I made some that were 5 minutes and 4 minutes, and they did really well. And I started to get in a lot of places. And then my films were getting better quality because I was meeting people would know that my films had screened at certain places, and they would be wanting to work with me, and just kind of like evolved, And then getting to like Slam Dance was huge for me. And I think that some of the people who are working with me now, they know it's going to be a good product. They know it's probably going to have a good chance at getting in the larger festivals. And the thing about the larger festivals is that is really where the industry people are. Mm-hmm. That is really where, if you go to medium-sized festivals, it's wonderful. But you're really not going to run into anybody who works somewhere who is there looking for stuff and has a budget of, $10 million to buy things. So for me, I'm at a point now where it's like I've been in, now it's over 300 festivals. But there came a point where it gets a bit ridiculous. It's like, I've been in 850 festivals. So what? You're still broke, live in an apartment, next to the highway. And I can hear the highway.
It's very easy to get here.
Yeah, it's very easy to get here. And that's where I am now, is like, with the features. And I will make some shorts, but I'm really hooked on features now. Watching you guys tonight, you guys and Molly, watch the movie. I'm kind of sitting back, kind of watching you watch it. It's like you see that connection that you don't get with shorts, mostly. And the love of the characters stays with you, and you see why feature films are what really moves people, And so for me, it's like, I'm looking at this. I've been in Slam Dance. I was at Park City, and I want to go back. I don't want to go back with a feature. And I'd rather be down the hill, which is where Sundance is. But if I'm applying to both, and if it gets in top of the hill at Slam Dance, that's fine too. And if it doesn't get in either of those, well, then the next big one that comes around, I think, is South by Southwest, and then there's Telluride. There's Cannes.
Tribeca.
Tribeca. Toronto, because Toronto will take features from... Toronto won't take shorts from anybody who's not Canadian, but they take features. And, the big ones. Mm-hmm. And try a whole year of getting in a big one. I think of Ed Burns, who had the Brothers McMullen. He tried to get into medium-sized ones and got rejected all over the country. And then someone said, hell, you might as well send it to Slam Dance. Sundance, because it's $25, $50. Sundance is still pretty cheap. And he sent it in. It got in. It won the audience award. And, he's acting in Saving Private Ryan. He has a bunch of films to his credit. Of course, that's a success for everyone.
Right. Every 1,000 that get in.
That's right.
Well, from what I hear you're talking about, when I was a young filmmaker and it took some time, I was very insecure about my ideas, and I had an ego. Like, I just was like, no, I can't share. I don't want to collaborate. And through time, especially with the internet and the people that I've met outside of college working in films, I've grown to, collaborate, to listen. And what I'm hearing you saying is like, you were just like, I'm going after these guys to know what they did right. What did I do wrong? And that, to me, that's amazing that you would go out there, because a lot of people, a lot of filmmakers are so, they're egos. I mean, it's a very ego-filled industry, and they don't.
I have ego.
Well, yeah, but
I
it's
want to be I want to be good.
yeah, but you
And I
don't
wanna-
want. But you also want to hear what you did wrong to make yourself better.
It is hard. But what's the alternative?
Well,
To stay in a bubble and then you kind of don't get.
A lot of people
better.
do that. They'll be like, no, this is what's good, and I'm just going to keep doing it. If they could do it wrong, they'll just keep doing it again.
I think for me, because I really didn't know much, I did go on and take some classes at Duke Center for Documentary Studies, enough to realize I didn't want to do documentary.
Right.
And then I went up to the workshops in Maine. But it's like going to summer camp, but you do screenwriting for a month, and you're there and you get to hang out with other screenwriters. And some of them have, some success and just be in the same room. And it's like, oh, it's so awesome, And then you go, eat outside every day. And it's kind of like camp again, So I'm in my 40s. I get to go to camp and learn. But in reality, I didn't know a whole lot. So when I got on set, I had to be collaborative. And I'm not saying it was because I was different than anyone else. I have as much ego as anybody. But I did not know what the fuck I was doing. And I had to listen to the other people who knew more. And it wasn't always easy, And then sometimes I kind of wanted to assert myself, but it was too soon, or I kind of, and at times, the whole thing would be getting away from me, and I'm the director. And it's like, I got to lasso this thing. Got to like, wait a minute. And finally, through making so many films, I'm at a point where it's like, I feel confident enough with what I'm doing, and confident enough because I come from a background of not knowing anything. I do listen to people, and some people I really have learned so much from, so many people on my set. I'll mention one, Ken Peterson, he's a guy who shot for major television shows, who, works second unit on big movies. And, I'm working on a small film as a gaffer, and he's the DP, and it was so refreshing to see someone with so much experience be okay with everybody, no matter if you were bringing coffee, he was awesome to you. If you were going to sweep up afterward, he treated you like you were so important. And I was like, yeah, I want to work with that guy, And fortunately, he had seen some of my films, and we hit it off really well, And I was his gaffer, but he was basically saying, get the inky and put it in the corner. I'm like, okay, what's an inky? And what's a corner? And, it's like, I know a 1K and a 2K, and, I know what a C-stand is, and a stinger, and that kind of stuff. But an inky, he knew everything, and he had a million names for everything. And he was so patient. He's like, okay, this is the inky. And you got to be particularly careful with this one, because the head will fall almost any time you put it up, and the thing will come crashing down. So make sure this chain's connected, and, it was like anybody was so relaxed with it all, not uptight.
Well, another interesting thing that you brought up, like you guys had this, almost instant friendship, it seems like.
Yeah.
And you were able to, show him your script, or show him some of your work, and and that's
we had just shot a short called Mary and Jennifer, and Nick Beery, who's a great filmmaker in his own right, shot it for me, and then I was thinking about turning into a feature, and Nick really wanted to see a whole script before he would think about it, and just by chance Ken said, "What are you working on next?" And I said, "Well, I got this thing. I made a short film." Showed it to him. He goes, "Oh, this is great." And I said, "I've got 10 pages of a feature, but I do have a treatment." Gave him the treatment, gave him the 10 pages, and he just looked at me right there. He read it during lunch, and he said, "I want to shoot this thing." And we talked about money. That's all I'll say. We had a short conversation about money, and we both realized we were on the same track. And he didn't have a whole lot going on in the foreseeable future, and was very interested in getting back into feature filmmaking. And he liked the idea enough to get in on it. And once Ken was on it, and Ben Turney was on for sound, which kind of developed on a similar track about the short, and Ben wanted to test out some equipment, and that's how I was able to get both of them in. And once they came in, having that kind of like names on your crew, mm-hmm. a lot of people just kind of moved forward and said, "I want to be in it too."
So where do you get some of your your ideas for your films, or what was your background like growing up? What are your favorite kind of films that you used to watch and really enjoyed?
I grew up with parents who didn't have a lot of skills around how to treat people and how to appropriately communicate what it was you felt displeasure about, what it was you wanted, what it was you didn't like. So I grew up with a lot of verbal abuse and some physical abuse as well. And I quit high school at one point and got back in, and I got thrown out. And I got back in, and I got put into a special program where part of your day was groups where you would have to talk about feelings, and you'd have to confront each other, and you'd learn appropriate ways to use I statements, stick to your feelings. Of course, originally I was like, I feel like you're a dick, which, is not really a feeling, nor really an I statement. And I've, ultimately learned to say, I'm feeling really threatened when you're around me.
Right.
The way you talk in class scares me. And to be able to say that, took a lot more getting in touch with my feelings and a lot more honesty. It was a bit scary. But I learned how to do it, and the teachers and counselors in that group encouraged me to kind of move in that direction. And I was like, no, I want to be a writer and a filmmaker. So I worked on a fishing boat for a while after high school, long enough to know I needed to go to college. And so I went to college, majored in English, because there weren't many film schools back then. I'm old. When I was born, I think Eisenhower was still in the White House. He was leaving very soon, but he was still there. So people don't even know who Eisenhower is.
I think that's smart, though. I mean, for me, I went to I went for broadcast cinema, and that didn't do anything to my films. It didn't add anything to my films or the things that I was doing. Like you're saying, you had an English major. You use your experiences from when you grew up and you could see it in your films. They're so well, put together. The characters, you could just believe. Like every film I've seen that you've done, the characters I could relate to right off the bat. They jump at you, and you just immediately get drawn into it. And, as far as film school, for me, concerned, I wish I had something else to experience those 4 years in college rather than learning theory and all this other garbage. It's more about experiences, what you bring to film, your experiences personally. So talk about, how has your short films, progressed into this feature film?
Yeah, it wasn't quite A plus B equals C. There were lots of stumbling blocks, and I often would take on more than I could chew, and then have to kind of regroup again and try again. I think I became more, as I became more confident as a filmmaker, I think I also became more confident as a writer to allow myself to tell the stories that I really want to tell. And I think I was scratching the surface in things like Alexa, which is about surface and going under the surface. It had teenagers in it, young teenagers who were kind of bumping up against the world. And Sadie turned 7, the same kind of thing. A 7-year-old is bumping up the reality of people eat animals, and how do I deal with that? And she deals with it by taking her birthday gift, her bicycle, her new bicycle, driving to the restaurant where her parents ate lobster the night before for her 7th birthday. They went out and celebrated. And she sees the lobsters in the lobster tank, sees them on the parents' plate, puts 2 and 2 together, takes the bicycle the next morning, puts a box on the back, straps a box on, and goes and steals the lobsters from the restaurant, rides to the ocean, and sets them free. And we've all had, when we were kids, you see the lobsters going in, and you're like, no.
I still do that.
Yeah. It's like, you can't believe you're putting something in a pot of boiling water that was just crawling around on the floor. As ugly as they are, it's still like, whoa. So I think, those kind of stories just started to come out. And what I really wanted to get in touch with is what I really am drawn to is the growth of people, especially in transitional times. And a big one is going from teenage years into your 20s, going from being a kid to becoming an adult. Not that it always happens in a number of, just a couple of years. And also people who are bumping up like I said, when my parents died, it really affected me. And even though they weren't great parents, they were still, even that, I was just moved by their deaths and the fact that I was never going to be, the chance of being close to them was gone forever.
Now, was it something was it something they said, or was it just the fact that you could see that they had that they had all this talent they didn't get to use?
Yeah, the fact that could see it, and that it was kind of, they died with the music in them, and with my mom and stepdad, they covered it with a lot of, just real toughness and being mean to people, and kind of, they weren't happy,
right?
Because they weren't living their lives, and they had given up their dream for the American dream. When my grandfather came over to America from Portugal, his dream was the American dream. He wanted to work in a fishing boat. He wanted to have a house and wife and kids, and he wanted to be an American. And by the time my generation came along, if you had your dream, the temptation was to give it up to corporate America to become, the American dream of corporate America. Is like, no, I want to be a vagabond. I want to rove and ramble and kind of like be Walt Whitman, And, when I was a kid, that didn't cut it with my parents at all.
Yeah.
They were like, you're a dreamer. You got your heads in the cloud. You're going to work on the fishing boat with the rest of us.
So you say you're Portuguese and you grew up in Massachusetts, right?
Yeah.
Whereabouts in Mass?
Gloucester.
Okay,
Gloucester.
Gloucester. I'm part Portuguese. My mom grew up in New Bedford.
Oh, Bedford and Gloucester, both real high percentage. Bedford even more. New Bedford was a lot of Portuguese. Gloucester was Italian, mostly Italian, and then a Portuguese kind of section. Mm-hmm. So, my mother was always like, the Italians this, the Italians. She didn't say the Italians. She said all those other names, And the Italians hated the Portuguese. Portuguese hated the Italians. Of course, I was always in love with the Italian girls.
Oh, yeah.
And my mother's like, you're not bringing her here. So we stayed in the car.
So tell me about the filmmaking community here in Raleigh. It's so talented, and you mentioned a few names like Nick Berry, and both of us know Ajit. Just talk about the collaborations and the things that you guys are doing in this area.
I'm not in Raleigh. I'm in Hillsborough.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. The Triangle.
Durham, Chapel Hill, Raleigh. Yeah. So it's funny though, because Raleigh is quite far. As far as like.
It's another 30 minutes from here, right?
But as far as filmmaking goes, it's quite far. I hardly ever shoot anything in Raleigh. In my films, it's like, if we're going to go somewhere, we're going to go to the mountains.
That's right.
We're going to go to the sea.
The country.
Or we're going to stay here. If I need city, we've got city. I never shoot in city. I don't know if you know this, but I like rural things.
Yeah.
And in my movies, there's hardly ever any city. I can't even watch movies that take place in city. It's really weird. It's like, I love things that happen in the country, and it's hard to find them. So, and even one of my favorite movies is Witness, and in the beginning they're in the city, and I'm like, oh, come on.
Get to the Amish people, please.
Get out in the country, Amish or whatever. Just get out of the country. But Raleigh is, I feel like there's a couple communities, and I feel like Raleigh has one. And I feel like it's just as far as Greensboro, Winston-Salem. Not that there aren't great people there who I love to work with, but for the most part, it's like a different circle. And then the other circle is kind of, there's a Jeet here, Nick's here, I'm here, Jim McQuaid's here, and kind of like, and Anita Mills and Mary Cates, just, female filmmakers too. Bobby, hey Bobby. There's a good solid group of people, and there's enough of everything, that we all kind of can help each other. And it really works for me. And I'm not by nature the most collaborative person. I can be difficult. I'm really growing a lot and trying to be more and more collaborative. But to give you, just as an example, I'm very collaborative in the filmmaking, and that's opened me up in other parts of my life too, more and more, because it didn't really come that natural to me. Like I said, I had to be, because I didn't know anything. And the collaborative nature, the kindness of everybody, the willingness to help. And I think people see me as that, and I am in some ways. I'm really energetic, and if you want to get something done, I jump right in and help. But for my own projects, it's been a growing process, I'm thinking of two filmmakers I'm working with right now, helping Nene Kalu do her first documentary on this young African-American woman who is graduating from high school, used to be in a lot of trouble. My kind of kid, lots of trouble. And then she had a baby, and now she's like class president. She just graduated. She's a full-time job, just kind of taking on the world, you know. And it's like, oh, it's so great to see. And then another friend of mine, Camden Watts, is doing a documentary on the Montagnards and how they were left behind by the Americans when we pulled out of Vietnam. And it's her first documentary, and like all of us, she's making every mistake imaginable. But she has so much passion, and the film is coming together so well that, you know, I'm just giving her my time to really, really get in there and help her edit and correct some of the sound issues. And, you know, like when I started, I didn't know anything, and she's learning a whole lot. So in those ways, I'm collaborative, but I think sometimes on set, I may really struggle with it and might come out sideways. But I think the collaborative nature of filmmaking, especially in this area, in the givingness, people like Ishmael and people like Mark Goodwillie, are just so open and giving, and you know, and even beyond, you know, go to Greensboro. I got invited to go to Greensboro to show some of my films, and that's how I ran into you guys, and you know, it's just,
how do you know Mike Bean?
I know Mike Bean from Facebook. You know, it's like he's one of the people. I was a friend of his on Facebook, and then, hey man, that's you. Hey, yeah, you know, kind of like, and it's like, you know, I have like 600 friends on Facebook. Probably 300 of them I've met. You know, I know well, and then the other ones kind of. But then every now and then you run into them, and it's like, you know, yeah, this is why, you know, Facebook, I think, is a good thing.
It's a great thing.
You know, I mean, there's drawbacks to it, and privacy issues are always trying to, like, you know, they're trying to get your stuff out there so everyone knows what you want to buy. You know, of course, I don't have any money, so send me any ad you want. Great. If it's not free, I can't use it.
So,
but I didn't answer your question. I don't know what the hell it was.
I don't know either. It's getting late.
Collaborative. Maybe I did. Yeah, it is getting late. You know, you guys came out, watched my film, gave feedback. I say you guys because Blake's here with you.
That's right, Blake Fawcett.
Silent partner. And my AD from my film, Bobby Whittemore, is here as well. And they're being very patient with us with 2 microphones.
That's right.
But go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish what you were about to say.
I could just like end on something if you want, or maybe there's something specific you want to ask me.
Well, I was just gonna. I just wanted to touch up on Southland of the Heart. You know, just like where do you feel where it's gonna go, and if you can describe, you know, what it is, because we really didn't get into that.
Yeah, Southland of the Heart has been described by others as an end-of-the-life road movie. What I tend to say is what's on Facebook, which doesn't tell you anything. It is a story of life, loss, and lessons. I don't know. Many lessons love has to offer. I think it's a movie about love. It's a movie about 2 women, one who is older, who is dying of cancer, who has to learn to love herself. And the other one is younger and very much comes from a background of abuse and a background of neglect. And she has defenses up, and she very much has to learn to love others. And the 2 of them, through their travels together, the younger one is helping the older one take a road trip to the beach where she really wants to go before she dies. And so they hit the road, and they have adventures, both great and small, both wonderful and horrible. And through those adventures and through the people that they meet, especially through the people that they meet when they wind up in this small town that I call Bynum Falls. I really wanted, you know, Bynum to be, I love Bynum. It's this little place, you know, and there's nothing there. So we didn't actually shoot there, but I wanted it to be Bynum Falls. And the things that happen there are wonderful and painful, and they grow a lot. And I think by the end of the film, Jennifer has learned to love other people, to open up, at least allow the beginnings of friendship and love, and isn't always pushing everyone away. And you kind of see it in the film. You see her in the beginning, you know, anyone who she comes in contact with, it's toughness right away, except for her sister. Mm-hmm. But there's an edge and there's a toughness. And then while they're on the road, you know, she changes. And by the time she's in the thick of being in Bynum Falls, she's even accused of some things that she didn't do, and she handles it so differently. And when she has to curse and, let out, she goes into her bedroom and pounds on the bed and yells curses, then goes off by herself and thinks about what she's going to do. Whereas earlier in the movie, she might have hit that woman,
Yeah.
or at least, called her a name or two. And I think that's what it's about. It's about love. And I think that's what life is about, is learning how to love and how to be loved, and how to love yourself more than anything, and how to love other people second, because I don't think you can do one without the other. And that's certainly what my life is about. And I'm certainly very capable of keeping love at bay. And because I learned, you had to protect yourself from the people who, quote, love you, or they're going to hurt you. You learn that in your house when you're small. Whether your parents or other siblings or whoever it is, meant to or not, they may have taught you that you can't trust, and that you really can't open yourself up to love. You got to defend yourself against it. And we don't say that, but that's really, you're defending yourself against being hurt. And you can only be hurt if you open yourself up. So kind of keep yourself tight.
Now, I see Jennifer, how with the mother and her sister, like she was the mother of the family, protecting her sister from the mother. And just, when she's outside the house, just damning everyone because she had to do that. She really didn't have her childhood or experience.
Yeah, well, the little bit we see of her life, she can't go home.
Yeah.
Her mother hates her. Her mother, the sister says, Mom comes home, she'll kill you. And I don't know if she'll necessarily really kill her, but it would not be pretty. And she obviously can't live there. There's been some stuff going on. Perhaps Jennifer confronted her on her alcoholism or on her inability as a mother.
Yeah.
Any number of things, And Jennifer's life's not good. No matter where she goes, she's either stealing or being, suspected of it, or being beaten up, or running up against, bad people. So hitting the road is a great alternative, and sometimes you just have to go. And she doesn't take the trip to grow; she takes the trip to get away.
Yeah.
And she takes Mary with her because Mary needs to go away, and she gets something wholly other. And she's a different person by the end of the movie. And that's the thing with features is, that you can't believe that in 98 minutes, you have seen this person go from, being stuck somewhere because of what happened in the past to breaking through that slowly, incrementally, but in a huge way,
right,
to where they're handling everything differently in the world, and the world is changing for them. And in 98 minutes, you're in love with that person, and it's like, wow, like Molly was like, I didn't want it to end. I really liked them a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what I love. I mean, that's what I love about Junebug. That's what I love about Sling Blade. Of course, they're very rural too. But there's these people who you're like, you don't know them at all, and then by the end of the movie, you're like, I don't want it to end. Oh, I can watch it again. Okay.
Well, I want to thank you, well, first of all, for, asking me to be a part of the movie. I mean, that, to me, like, it was unexpected. I had no idea what was going on. You're like, hey, I just want to see you in here. Just beat up this girl. That's fine. But when I went on set and, felt your crew, the love you had, I mean, when you talk about love, your crew and your actors have love for you and the film. They absolutely love it. And it felt so great to be on that set and feel it, just be a part of that. It was like osmosis. I walked in, it was like, love everyone. And then I came back and helped you with some sound. But it was an outstanding experience. I'm so glad I could be a part of it. And thank you so much for asking, Blake and myself to come down today to watch us and to give you some, feedback. And it was absolutely wonderful. And, thanks again for doing this, Todd. And look forward to watching this on the big screen. Not
Thanks.
just like Slam Dance. I'm talking like, theatrically released.
Well, that would be something. Yeah, I can't even. I don't even go there, but it sure would be great. I mean, I'm hoping I get to be in Park City, and I mean, I'm not the kind of person who's going to make my reservations or anything, but when we found out we were in Slam Dance in 2009, we quickly found a place, and I was broke, but I have two great co-producers on that particular film, and they got a place to stay. Because Slam Dance with a short, you don't get put up. With Sundance, you might, but if you have a feature in Sundance, they put you up and they wind it down. If you feature at Slam Dance, it's the same thing. But anyway, I'm rambling again. But I want to thank you. I mean, I I met you, and then I was like, hey, you want to be in my movie? It was like, Jennifer's really small. You're huge, dude. You're like, especially then you had like, big, huge chest and arms, and I still do. But it's like, this is great because, she really like can't get away from this guy. He's gonna mess her up. And where are you from originally? Jersey?
Jersey. Yeah.
Jersey, yeah. You had the right accent for Rocco.
Although
and it had everything, and
I could not do the redneck accent.
Yeah, kind of. But you fit it perfectly. Yeah. And I don't audition. It's to me, I've been lucky. For the most part, I've really been lucky in it. But I feel like if I get the right feeling, very intuitive around the people that I need to be working with.
You know your people. I mean, you know your characters too.
And Jennifer Evans, I got to say, amazing. I said it before we were online, but. I went to see her in a play. She'd worked as a PA on a number of films that I was on, my own and other people's. And she said, I'm going to be in this play. Come back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean. And I was like, yeah, I was familiar with it. It was turned into a movie too. And so I went to see it, and it was like, Jennifer was phenomenal and just moved me so much in her role. The whole cast was amazing, but Jennifer just stood out, and I was like, I'm gonna write something. So I wrote a short film for her and Mary. And the short story is the film was really good, and then we turned it into a feature. And Jennifer really was I wrote it for her, and I wrote it with her in mind. I thought she could be that person, and she rose to the occasion. And then everyone else who came in. The Kate sisters I've worked with a lot. They're phenomenal. They don't think they are at all. None of these actors think that they're like great, but they are great. And Carrie Bogart came on board. Was just phenomenal as Mary. Clara, played by Hannah Brown, who's a great actor. The women were all great, and the guys were all great. Jeffrey Morris Tex, Dave Smith, who plays the mechanic.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he was great.
And he's such a wonderful human being. And Jeffrey and it's like, and you guys have to play these bad guys. And for Dave in particular, he's just so nasty in the movie. He'd like come in and he'd say, how's this? He'd have the makeup on and all that grease on his face and, just like, how's this? And mess his hair up and it'd get worse and worse, You're like, that's good enough. And how's this? Even worse. So it's like the worst person you ever want to run into. And he just played it so well. I'm really lucky, and I'm really happy with the film. The small groups of people I'm showing it to, more and more the response that Bobby and I are getting. Bobby's my assistant director. And, what we're getting is, more and more that it's flowing, and more that the story is holding. And now it's kind of come to a place too where some people are saying you could add a little more because it's always cut. And Blake's like, I could use some more of the movie.
Yeah, he wants some more Clara and Jennifer. What's that?
More ocean. Thank you, and thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Oh man, it was a pleasure. Always, and the whole reason why I do this is because. The people that inspire me. I want to know what inspires you and how you got to where you are and, how you think. And it's just been a pleasure. And I know you tell me the same thing off, just knowing you tell me enough as it is. So I just want to share this with my audience and everyone else.
The admiration is mutual. What you guys are doing with Often Awesome and everything else is just great. I'm honored.
Well, that's the conversation I had with Todd Tinkham. Thanks for listening, and tune in again next time when I interview somebody when I get a...
Thanks for listening to this episode of Talent Freaks. Todd's journey from working with at-risk kids to becoming an acclaimed filmmaker is a testament to the power of following one's passion. His dedication to authentic storytelling and his collaborative spirit have made his films resonate with audiences worldwide. While doing research for this episode, I tried to find Todd's work. I can't find it. I think he still has some stuff on Vimeo, but as far as like finding Todd, who was in my social circle, ever since I moved to California, I lost in touch and I can't find him on any social media. I did reach out to a friend. They said he's being a recluse, so that is a choice that everybody has to make, and he's doing it, so I'm going to leave him at peace. But I do still appreciate and enjoy his work, and I hope someday to see his work online. Just wanted to share that, so I don't have any links in the description for Todd Tinkham. If you'd like to get to know my work, visit talentfreaks.com to see some of the videos that I've worked on, as well as the photography that I'm currently doing and so much in love with. If you enjoyed this episode, Don't forget to subscribe and rate the podcast. It truly helps others discover these incredible stories. And if you have suggestions for future guests or topics, feel free to reach out. I'm always eager to bring new and exciting conversations to the podcast. Until next time, keep exploring, keep creating, and stay curious.